Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 652 for the 7th of December. Major developments over in the Bakhmut Front. Over in the northern flank of the Bakhmut Front, we have major changes in terms of the front line. In the latest mapping coming out from the pro-Russian sources, Ryba, they show that the Russian forces have captured this entire nursery region, and they have actually even come into this major entrenchment that was battered over by the Wagner forces previously, and this extends over to the western part of Kreminna. So this signifies a huge advancement by the Russian forces. There's a huge push in this sense, and this is quite a lot of advancement. This is tentatively still not acknowledged yet by the pro-Ukrainian side. I checked Deep State UA's mapping. I did not see this this being reflected yet, but this is actually quite significant, because if the Russian forces indeed have captured this major entrenchment in this region here, then I think the progress is going to be quite a lot faster, because previously when the Wagner forces was pushing this area here, it took a very long time to push all the way to the highway region, and after that they just can't push further. So for the Russian forces to push so fast, is a probability that the Ukrainian forces is severely weakened as compared to during the days of the Wagner forces. So I'm going to assume that we're going to see a lot of withdrawal of the Ukrainian forces to a next line of defense along the three lines, and they can't stay in all this area. This is all going to be death zones, and they're going to have to hold this new line over here. So we have the reports of the fighting around here being reported by Ukrainian Defense Ministry as well. They mentioned that they repelled 24 attacks in Bodanivka, Ivanivka, Klishchevka, and Andriivka combined. So I don't know how do you count that, but that is the current situation over in the northern flank of the Bakhmut Front. So there is also geolocation at Orikhovo-Vasilivka, where the Ukrainian forces getting hit by a Russian, I think it's drone, I can't remember, but it changes the front line, showing that the Russian forces is no longer at Orikhovo-Vasilivka at all. This is probably the case for a long time, because it's quite difficult to hold a position within the village if you have no concerted effort to actually hold or attack. So the Russian forces some long time ago probably have already withdrawn to a more defendable line, much further away, probably around this area here, and then we just have this confirmation that the Ukrainians is actually here. So this have some updates in terms of the front line over at the Orikhovo-Vasilivka region. Over in the southern flank, we have fighting reported at towards Ivanivsky. There is a long footage, I believe it's produced by War Gonzo. I have shared it in the DPA Telegram channel. You can actually check out the description below to join the DPA Telegram channel. And also that the Russian forces continue to be pushing, apparently capture some high ground around this area here. Some high ground, they give some numbers for the name, which I don't really care. And the Russians are also attacking in the Andriivka region. So the main push in this area here is mainly in the northern area here, as the Russians try to secure this northern area here. As I mentioned, it's not necessary to attack through the town. It's more important to go through the high ground, capture the high ground, and automatically you capture the settlement itself, because the high ground overlooks the settlement. It's extremely difficult to hold a position within the settlement if you actually do not have the position in the high ground. Otherwise, further south, there's no more fighting around this area here. And then we move on over to another major front line. Is over at this Orikhiv sector of the Zaporizhzhia Front. Another big development around this area here. In the latest mapping by Ryba, the Russian forces apparently have secured the line all along the major entrenchment, the so-called Surovikin line. Apparently, this entire area here tentatively is still not acknowledged on the Ukrainian side. The Russians have already pushed, and this actually probably corroborates all these reports from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry about the fighting west of Verbove. So if this is true, then the fighting west of Verbove is then the accurate way of describing it, because which means the Russian forces is basically literally fighting in the western part of Verbove. So this is the west. So so this push is pretty significant. This actually wiped out a huge chunk of the Ukrainian advance, at least 2 to 3 kilometers deep towards Verbove. And with this push, with the Russians aligning their positions along the entrenchment, the previous the tiger tooth kind of thing, and the tank ditches and everything, this is going to secure the Russian lines much more better than holding a line around here. And then from this area here, the Russian forces can then actually proceed to counterattack and recapture more grounds around this area here, and totally wiped out the gains that the Ukrainian forces have gained. Most likely, in my opinion, the more sensible thing is to actually fight down the highway, this highway around here, capture back these 2 trench lines, and then hit to the north of Robotine, cutting off the entire Ukrainian forces that is holding around this salient here will be encircled. So if I zoom out a bit, you probably can see it better. You can see that this is basically a salient. The Ukrainian forces has basically pushed through in this area here over the past half a year. So they could be encircled in this area here if the Russian forces continue to go down the highway, which I think is a good way to go, because it is a highway. It's good for communications and for transport and logistics, and they can actually push out the bit, secure a buffer around this area here, because we did have heard reports of Russian forces pushing over in this northwestern part of Verbove. We did have reports of this previously, so this could provide a good buffer zone, and the Russians are already making a push over in the Robotine region, and apparently this is the around here, or probably here, is where they actually acquired another Leopard 2 tank, or probably the first Leopard 2 tank, which is pretty intact, but inside is burnt out. There was a skeleton inside the driver's seat. It's quite bad, but the Russian forces captured it around this area here, which also may suggest that the Russians are actually making a good push around this area here. And if the Russians make this pincer together from the directions coming from Verbove, the encirclement would be disastrous for the Ukrainian forces. And if there is any signs that the Ukrainian forces lose probably this entrenchment, if they lose this heavy entrenchment here, then I think the Ukrainian forces may start to consider about a possible withdrawal out from the Robotine salient, because I don't think they have enough to hold up the Russian forces, even if you can say that they have quite a bit. They have armored vehicles and whatnot, artillery systems, but compared to what the Russians currently have, it is insufficient to deal with the Russians. So the Russians could move very quickly and wipe out the entire force in this area, and the rear position will become really bare. The entire salient here is around 10 kilometers to 12 kilometers. So around 12 kilometers. So 12 kilometers, honestly, I believe if you go by a mechanized assault kind of situation, you can do it within a few hours. But of course, that depends on the Ukrainian defenses. Otherwise, we do have the reports of the fighting around Verbove and Robotine, as per reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, and no one else is talking about it except for Ryba, showing this updated mapping from the Russian perspective. So otherwise, I think other than that, in term of the Zaporizhzhia Front, we have geolocation of MRIS shelling of Ukrainian forces at Huyapilske Piłskie. Let me move out here. Huliai Piłskie. Interesting name. And over at the Velika Novosibirsk sector, the Russian forces is attacking over at the Uruzhany and Staromayorsky region. The Russian Defense Ministry basically say that they are attacking Ukrainian forces around this area here. So that's all from the Zaporizhzhia Front. We move on over in the southern front in the Kherson region. At the Kherson region, the Ukrainian forces sent in more reinforcement over into the opposite side of the railway bridge at Pridniprovsky. This is reported by Ryba. They say that they land with 2 boats. No, they're probably rotation of forces. And over at the Krinky region, the Ukrainian forces are not attacking anymore. They are currently holding position. There is a reports by Ryba reporting that the western approach is currently now being mined by the Ukrainian forces, while the Russian forces continue their bombardments of the Ukrainian forces within the settlement using FPV drones as well as using the helicopter to fire at Ukrainian forces within here. So situation at Krinky continues to be in this very unusual situation where you have a beachhead but you can't do anything about it. And if World War II D-Day turns out to be like this, we will all be speaking German or Japanese right now. So moving on, over at Shavony Mayat, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that Russian troops, artillery fire, and airstrike hit Ukrainian forces over at this region here. This is particularly interesting because this is very out of nowhere, and the number of casualties seems to be a little bit high. So I wonder if there is a potential landing force that was planning to go over to the opposite shore of the Dnipro River, and it was discovered by the Russian forces, and they hammered it, and to prevent a possible amphibious assault. Although the use of the word Russian troops also might suggest that maybe there was some infiltration by Russian forces. It's kind of unclear. We're not too sure what does this supposed to mean. Only the Russian Defense Ministry know the details. But it's something interesting, out of the norm. That's why I want to highlight it. We move on into the Donetsk Front. So this is the Donetsk Front. At the Donetsk Front, we have fighting reported north of Novodonetsk. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, the Russian forces seems to be pushing northward, trying to maybe increase the buffer zone around here. Over at this Voleda region, there is fighting reported north of Mikhailsky as well. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, the idea of the attack here is just to the Ukrainian forces is doing some rotation of their forces, and the Russians take this advantage and hit them, and they are most unprepared. But it's not an assault. It's basically just fire mission. And we move on over at the Novomihailivka region. There is fighting reported near Solotke, as well as fighting reported in the area of Novomihailivka. So information come from the Russian Defense Ministry. I'm not sure what to read. Look into this yet. Solotke usually is very one-off. You can see 22nd October, 5th November, now 7th December. So it's very sporadic. So I don't think we need to care that much just yet. I don't think it's something major yet. There is some geolocation of by military summary of Ukrainian M777 Haubizel. These are American artillery systems that is destroyed by the Russians using a Lancet, and you can kind of see the location of where the artillery systems are. They are around this area here. It's probably supporting the operations around Marinka region, and the distance between the front line and the artillery system is between 8 to 10 kilometers. So it's pretty much more or less in artillery range. So so them getting hit by the Lancers is quite sad for the Ukrainian side, And but it's getting very normal now, though. Even I can see all the dooming in Twitter by the Ukrainian supporters. All these hardcore supporters are all dooming now. So yeah, if the most hardcore are all dooming, then yeah, it's pretty bad. But anyway, maybe if but I remember seeing some of the the thumbnails of Denis Davidov. He still looked very positive. So if he start to doom for 3 videos to 5 videos straight, then you probably know that the end is near. So but if Denis Davidov did not doom, I think things are still still all right. You can still move forward. You can still watch his content and feel happy about it. At Marinka, we still continue to have the fighting reported in this area here. There's no clear indication of what is happening. There is geolocation of Ukrainian forces getting hit by FPV drone dropped grenades at this position. So this area here, I just want to talk about Krasnohorivka. This area is severely fortified. The Ukrainians, this is another one of those fortress city. I don't talk a lot about this because the Russians don't even dare to try, because they did try a bit, but it's quite quite pointless. If you look deeper, you can see there's a lot of trench lines. It's across the entire region. You can see the trench line moving all the way back. These are communication lines, and there's, if you look through, you can see there's way more of them, and all these are pre-war duct. These are all during the Civil War. You can see it's all along the 3 lines, and then there's another main road down backwards. It's literally everywhere. You see another forward position. There's another defensive position around here. This entire area is heavily fortified. This is just as fortified as Avdiivka. So I don't expect any major operations from the Russians to try to siege and take Krasnohorivka. In fact, there's totally no needs in the strategic in my opinion, strategically, there's no need to take Krasnohorivka. You can always go around it. I think going around it, penetrating through, of course, going through Marinka, these few settlements is going to be painful. But if they just focus on the other directions, they can just bypass Krasnohorivka and it will just fall on its own. So yeah, don't expect too much from there. Over at this Avdiivka Front, so the Russian is still continuing their Avdiivka offensive. We have fighting reported in the area of Novokalinove, in the eastern part of Novobakhmutivka, at Stepove, over in the south at Avdiivka, and at Tonenke, as well as Povomaisky. So generally, the vector of attacks remains more or less the same. There is not a lot of developments. It seems like the Russians are still, making a very, very slow push. There's no big changes like we see in the Bakhmut Front or over at this Orikhiv sector of the Zaporizhzhia Front. Here, the is still pretty slow and steady kind of a situation. So no more mad rush like what we saw over in the Russian attack of this volcano and or the slag heap. So that was a very sudden major armored assault. So there is also no indication that the Russians are trying to storm the coke plant just yet. I think the supply of Coca-Cola is still pretty sufficient. There's no need to stock up. And the production of white powders probably is still operating pretty decently. Someone must be very happy about it. There is a bomb airstrike reported over in the 9th district around this area here, but it just shows that the Ukrainian forces is still holding defensive positions around here. This looks like a fortress. It reminds me of Voleda. So you can see it's all high ground, all high buildings. So this is going to be a pretty difficult place to storm. As shown at Voleda, it was a very, very difficult place to storm. And in another interesting geolocation is kamikaze drones attacking Ukrainian forces over in this very entrenched fortress position. This is a defensive position. There is a drone attack over here, and this is very particularly interesting to me, a very important geolocation to me, because this actually confirms that the Ukrainian forces continue to hold this defensive position despite all the hoo-ha of the Russian attacks in all these directions. The Ukrainians indeed still holds a strong position around this area here. So this is important to note. This is the outpost. As you can see, the Ukrainian entrenchment continues to be blue. And so we move away from the Avdiivka Front. Over at the New York Front, we have a weird report coming from the Russian Defense Ministry. They reported that there is fighting reported at Toretsk. Zerzinsk, how do you pronounce this? Zerzinsk is actually Toretsk. Actually should put this in. Zerzinsk. So Toretsk or Zerzinsk is actually the same place. It's a former name. You can see Zerzinsk. And so there is reportedly an attack by the Ukrainians from this position. And it's kind of weird because this is actually pretty far from the front line. It's around 5-6 kilometers. So we have a lot of weird reports around this area here. There is no indication that the Russians have captured all these grounds to justify an attack reported at Toretsk. So just take it with a pinch of salt for now. And we move on. We have covered Bakhmut Front. Over at the Siversk Front, the Russian attack, the Siversk offensive has ended. So Siversk offensive has ended because there's no more reports about this. I have no idea what the hell is happening. So maybe it's just a one-off. So yeah, false alarm. Fake news. DPA is fake news. Don't trust him. Anyway, over at the Bilohorivka in the Luhansk region, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that the Ukrainian forces attacked Bilohorivka. So another push out, some kind of counter-attack against the Russian push previously. And that's it from the Siversk Front. We move into the Kreminna Front. At the Kreminna Front, there is an exchange of offensive operations. The Russians continue their attack over at Terny. Ukrainian forces counter-attack over at Yampolivka and Torske, and also at Serebryansky Forestry, while the Russians are also pushing at Serebryansky Forestry. So there is a scurry of attacks on both sides. So it's still pretty dynamic. We shall see how this goes. We're not sure what is a clear situation around here just yet, other than the previous reports of the Russians making some advancement around the Yampolivka Terny region. So maybe this is a counterattack to push back the gains of the Russians. And we move on over in the Sviatove Front. There is nothing reported around this area here. And we move into the Kupyansk Front. At the Kupyansk Front, things is getting more and more quiet. The Russian Kupyansk offensive is now only being reported in the Sinkivka region, whereas the Ukrainians continue to counterattack over at Ivanivka, over at Sinkivka, as well as in the western part of Sinkivka within the forest region. So you can see the Kupyansk offensive is probably coming to a pause, yeah, I think it's a pause, so that maybe there's resupply, rotations, whatnot, and or maybe they have achieved their strategic objective of getting a lot of Ukrainian reinforcement into the Kupyansk Front from other front line, and force the Ukrainians to reinforce these lines here at the expense of other front line. I'm not sure if that's the case because no one really knows the true the order of battle for the Ukrainian side, because everything is operational secret. So, but if this is the truth, then it's probably the case where the Russians are now satisfied with the Ukrainian redeployment, and it gave a lot more operational space for the Russian forces in the other front line, particularly over at the Bakhmut Front, Avdiivka Front, and all the Kiev sector of the Zaporizhzhia Front, and all these redeployment over in all these regions here might actually be what the Russians are looking for in the Kupyansk offensive in this area here. So there is one last report I haven't mentioned, is the Ukrainian Sukhoi 25 shot down over Vesela Hora, or Veselaya Gora. So it's actually here. Again, this is shot down by air defense, very far away. This distance is around 60-70 kilometers from the front line. So very, very far away. Another Sukhoi 25 shot down. Previously, we have two Sukhoi 25 shot down over Dubropilia. Very, very nearby. They are just in the vicinity, around 15 kilometers away from each other. So, which could also means that the Ukrainians cannot even send in air support to the front line without getting risk of getting shot down, because Sukhoi 25 do not fire from this distance. They usually go a lot nearer. before they fire their rocket pods. So yeah, situation is horrible for the Ukrainian side. So anyway, thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe. Subscribe. You know, it's very important to subscribe. If you have been watching more than one of DPA's reports, I think it is fair that you subscribe, so that, you know, more new viewers be able to, you know, find DPA, because subscriber base basically defines what's the view count, the potential view count. So it's very hard for a small subscriber base to have a huge viewership, unless the video went viral. But given this is the daily report, it's unlikely to go viral in that kind of way. So, you know, subscription helps a lot. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.